Thanks, everyone. It's an honor to be included in this group and then to do this kind of symposium for each other and talk about our work. I'll be very brief. I work mostly as an artist and a researcher in North Carolina. I'm right now working at Duke University, and I run a research collective that you're looking at here, Slippage, Slippage Performance Culture and Technology. And I formed the group when I was on faculty at MIT, and I was working in performance and technology there, and also do an awful lot of writing, and brought the group down to Durham 9 years ago. So we've been down in North Carolina for 9 years. And Slippage is, you can see the kind of language that's used on the website, but I do encourage you, or invite you rather, to poke around. Pretty much everything we've published is available on here. So you can just kind of see a bunch of stuff that might be interesting at some point, writings. And then we run a few different kinds of projects. These are 4 projects that are ongoing. Afro-Feminist Performance Roots brings together a cohort of artists who are presenting as female and presenting as being of an African diaspora, largely from the Caribbean. We've convened that group 3 times so far, and the group meets and works together and writes without an agenda. They don't have to do anything necessarily besides decide they want to be among each other and work together. And the Black Performance Theory group has been running since 2000, so it's been running a really long time. It meets every couple of years at different locations around the United States. And this is a group that imagines itself as being a kind of collection of thinking possibility for people who are working in the areas of theoretical innovation and trying to maybe create strategies for sharing out how Black performance does its work. And the Collegium for African Diaspora Dance is a larger conference and publication gathering, if you will, and several of us on this call or in this group have been involved in that group. We've had 4 conferences every other year. We had one this year just before the shutdown. Had about 300 people come and share their research and their performances. And then Configurations in Motion is the youngest of these 4 initiatives. And this is a group that works to rethink how curating happens and what are our sort of placements inside of museum, especially museum cultures, as museums were proliferating until the shutdown. And we'll see what happens with museums and sort of exclusive gallery spaces over the next few years. So this was a group that was trying to rethink a kind of structural logic for these sorts of engagements. So a lot of what happens at Slippage is bringing people together, hopefully. Obviously, there's some teaching that's happening, and let's see what else. And again, publications are here. I guess I wanted to share just a couple projects as I'm watching the clock and just trying to give you a sense of the stuff that is urgent to me. We are centered in a large research institution in the US, which means that we use them as our 501c3. So all of our Slippage funding channels through Duke at this point. With the economic slowdown or downturn, that's been a process. Tomorrow, because the university has frozen its assets in order to imagine how it's going to survive into the fall. So it kind of tilts us back to the conversation we started around who owns the IP and where do we want AI for Africa to actually live. It's a real question because the university, even though it does operate as our 501c3, it also can make its own policy at the drop of a hat. So that's something to be aware of. I guess I just want to show a couple of things that we've made. This is a piece. I was trying to think about things that are engaged with responsive sort of technologies, and we developed technologies for performances. And this is an older piece called The Weight of Ideas, and this was a piece that used an interface with a Kinect camera. I'm going to skip ahead a bit. So what happened at the beginning of this piece is the performer, who was me in this case, put the Kinect camera, which is over here, in the front of the space. And this is not an AI program. The points on the body are simply tagged to different words that are floating in the background through a projector. So the Connect is taking data information from the dancer, and then through a patch that we wrote together, we put it alongside these words, and then the dancer is able to manipulate the words. This was Connect before Microsoft bought it, so it was before the SDK. We had to rewrite all our patches when Microsoft changed how we had access to the technology, the Connect camera. So one thing that I guess we're all aware of in doing the work that we do is that how the big companies sort of shift their game impacts how we, working with younger researchers or kids or designing our own stuff, it makes a difference in terms of what we're able to do and how we're going to do it. So we are entangled in these larger systems of engineering and ownership. So I guess I was talking already about like funding in terms of 501c3. Now engineering, as it gets owned, kind of limits what's possible, or at least narrows possibilities for people of color. So that was the idea with this piece. I'm going to jump to the end of it. So if you remember working with the Connect, if any of you were doing that, like 7, 8 years ago, it had an actual posture that reset the interface. So we use that posture in between playing with the interface in performance, and then wrote a couple things that the interface could do that would be surprises that could sort of amplify the ideas of the performance. The music was generated, the sound for this, which I know you're not really hearing, was generated in a few different interfaces, and worked with a Thelonious Monk version of a song we were concerned with. I think Andre was around when we showed this piece at the Moog Fest, which is an engineering and sound festival that happens in Durham, North Carolina, or used to happen. So we had made a piece that was concerned with legacies of redlining, which are bank practices in the United States, and that are always detrimental to people of color, especially Black people, and political gerrymandering, which is how voting has been restricted for a lot of people around the United States. And so this piece was titled "These Borders That Keep Me Down," and we created a really flexible space that explored some of the histories and legacies of these kinds of interactions. But there was an interface at the very end of this piece that I wanted to share with you. It's showing up here in this part of the clip, where the audience members are standing in front of a projection surface, and the camera is assigning each of them a value and just tracking them through the space. Let me go back to that a little bit. See if I can look better. So the camera is tracking the people in the room and then placing a value on them. And it was an interface, that one actually is generated by an AI kind of modeling. So we were curious about that and trying to move forward into thinking differently about AI. I'm not sure where the sound's coming from. Get that off. Finally, this semester, I was teaching a performance technology class with a couple of colleagues who also work at Duke, and we were concerned with ethics of AI. Was our theme for the year. We always have a theme. Or designs. So we spent the year thinking about AI and working through different AI models and trying to understand how we're going to share this information out with students. So I want to share with you something else that one of the student groups made that I thought was super interesting. And it kind of, for me, reflects the kind of stuff that I hope we'll be able to do and share out with especially younger researchers and engineers. So this is a very simple AI model that's been trained. And again, the challenge for the students was this question of trust. And, we had questions about ethics and trust. So what's happening in this very simple interface, there's been a model trained that can listen to the voice of the person, computer. So if I say things like happiness, love, you'll see that it gives a positive sentiment score. But if I start talking about how the week's been, outrage, anger, protest, violence, I would say neutral. Okay, let's try outrage, 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 outrage. and it gives a negative score, as you see there. So this is a model that some students had made that I thought was super smart and quick. Like they made this in a couple of weeks. So I'm happy to share here in the chat that address. And you can go to that address and try it out and play with it for yourself and see what you think. So that's a training of a model that's listening. It's a voice recognition model that has, again, the idea of what kinds of categories of words the model is listening to, and then it decides whether they're negative, neutral, or positive. And that takes me at the very end of my comments to this idea of pre-acceleration. As I've been trying to think more deeply around AI and how models are trained, I have real concerns around how pre-acceleration operates to the detriment of Black people, especially people of the continent or Africans, folks on the continent or in diaspora. Since our histories have been about disavowals and displacements and genocides, the AI models that we're training these days are AI models that actually perpetuate and continue these histories and legacies of genocides and disavowals. So one thing I'm wondering is how we can rethink what it is to train a model so that it's not only based on what's already happened, because what's already happened has been such a shit show. Thank you.